You're
You
looking
sound good.
well as well.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I think we've got a good show.
Yeah.
Um, I think in today's show, we're going to take a closer look at this platform of Jack's, and we're
Which
going
you're
to take
back
a look
on
at
now. You are back on
right.
Twitter after a long
Yes.
hiatus.
Yeah, and we're going to take a look at how we might be able to use it a little bit more strategically as a team, right? So the whole crowdsourcing concept, and can we use Twitter to get this message out? And again, we're not selling T-shirts here. We're trying to educate people as to a broader set of facts, I think would be the way to put it, right? So we're not denying, or I'm not denying, any of the facts that you've been told by any of the official sources of those facts. But I think there's another set of facts that have been
Ignored, maybe?
yeah, and kind of strangely ignored. In other words, it's one thing to ignore a set of facts. It's another thing when the set of facts you think it was somewhat relevant.
You might say
we'll take a closer look.
conspicuously ignored.
Indeed, well put. Well put. Mm-hmm.
Well,
What do we
I
have
always
here?
like to remind people, John, that this segment of the show, it's a precursor, it's an introduction, it's to let people know that the type of stuff that we talk about, while at one time, obviously, we just wanted people to listen to it on a sponsored platform like subscribestar.com/I am John Cullen or patreon.com/I am John Cullen. But it's now become mandatory because we just can't talk about this stuff on YouTube. We'd be obliterated from there permanently. People need to join us on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, where we can speak about this stuff freely. I get messages from people all the time, John, who say, oh, Rumble is free speech. You could be speaking freely on Rumble. And it's true, but this was once true of YouTube as well. It used to be, wild and woolly, all kinds of information flowing on there. But then once they became powerful and had control over that stuff, they put the tight grip on. So I just want to be cautious to not put too much faith in Rumble. They just bought Rockfin, which is definitely a competitor of Subscribestar and Patreon. We're not on there. And I'm not criticizing Rockfin. I'm just saying this is a company that's in it to make money, and there are going to be other companies that might take them over. So we're producing content on Rumble. People can watch simulcasts on rumble.com/user/CS The Truth. People can also find rumble.com/C/I am John Cullen. Great ways to keep up with the videos that aren't allowed on YouTube, but John and I are just slightly reluctant to make too much of an investment into this platform that's paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to Tulsi Gabbard to make what are essentially the worst Instagram videos I've ever seen, and charging me more than $1,000 a year to use it.
But I don't surf. So she surfs. So maybe if I surfed, I would get a deal. I don't know. But I want a hell of a lot better looking than I am. But I am in costume, and I wanted to point out to a lot of the audience who are looking for costume ideas this holiday season. It's really important that your costume doesn't alienate anybody, right? So you can't wear any. Well, you're not allowed to wear anything that would. So for example, right. So one of the costume ideas that people have been looking for is where can they get the John Cullen costume? So if they want to go on Halloween as John Cullen, where can they buy their John Cullen costume? Where can they get the black hat and the aviators and the black shirt? And then you can go on Halloween.
One of the most popular costumes this Halloween is the giant penis costume. Oh, sorry, that's Bill de Blasio. I mistook it for a different costume.
Well, you can wear a Bill de Blasio mask and the John Cullen costume together.
But where do people get that John Cullen costume?
I think you can get the black hat, the aviators, and the black shirt at any Marshalls or TJ Maxx or whatever, pretty easy to come by. Black hat, aviators, black shirt, and you can go as John Cullen for
So, John,
Halloween.
fill us in a little bit on this concept of strategic tweeting that you want to talk about. It's a big deal that you're back on Twitter. Why they threw you off quite a while ago, and it took some doing to get back on there. But what do you have in mind with regard to strategic tweeting, and what can people expect to see in just under 20 minutes when we make the transition over to subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and Subscribestar and Patreon/crowdsourcethetruth?
Well, you know how I feel about Sebastian Maniscalco, right? I love him. I think he's one of the
Wait,
best.
I don't even know who that is. How do I know?
Sebastian Maniscalco? You know who he is. I sent you the video. He's in one of the video clips I sent you. And we're going to look at that when we go patron only. We can't run that during this segment, but when we go patron only, we will. But he's one of my favorite comedians, and I think he's one of the best physical, body language comedians I've ever seen. And he's as good as they get. And he does a bit where I think it's his grandmother, his mother, his aunt, somebody's in the basement making lasagnas, and she's throwing lasagnas up from the basement. And it's an amazing bit. And I kind of feel like Sebastian Maniscalco's aunt or grandmother making lasagna.
I actually do know who the guy is. I remember seeing him. He talks about going to a Seder and being Italian at the Seder.
Yeah. He's fantastic. He's a very, very funny guy. In fact, Jerry Seinfeld produced his Netflix show. Or, something like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's very funny.
So when he talks about his grandmother making lasagnas and throwing the lasagnas up from the basement, it's a great bit. And it cracks me up. And I kind of feel like that, meaning I'm cranking out the lasagna. I'm doing the maps. I'm doing the charts. I'm cranking them out. And I'm throwing them up the stairs to you guys to use. And so when we go to our patron-only hour, I'm going to show you how some of these tweets have gone semi-viral and how some of them haven't, and kind of what's the difference, right? And where am I tweeting and where am I responding? And why is it that you guys don't get to see my responses? And is there a way where you can? Meaning, so let me give everybody an example. A couple months ago, Jon Stewart went on the Colbert Show and started talking about the reconstruction of the 1918 pandemic influenza on the show. All right, so now tweeting things to Jon Stewart is much easier now than it was when he had a TV show.
What do you mean?
Now his TV show, well, meaning now when he sends out a tweet for his Apple TV show, he gets five replies.
What?
Yeah, not that many people respond. He'll get a bunch of likes.
Jon Stewart.
He's still famous. Jon Stewart. But again, we've looked at this phenomenon with who was the young lady who was a newscaster on Fox who now is on YouTube and
Trish
we watched
Regan.
her show. Trish Regan. So Trish Regan has about the same number of subscribers as Between Us or something like that. Like she's in the middle. Not huge numbers once she's off of Fox. So TV is one thing and everything else is something else. So, now that he's got this Apple Plus thing, he's on Twitter. We're going to take a closer look at it and you're going to see where I responded. And in other words, we need to get the attention of certain people that can take this information and do something with it that's meaningful. I'm doing my part, but my part is just like cranking out the lasagna. Right. So I can make the charts and the maps and stuff to get it into the hands of the people that can do something about this. All right.
I think when they get a lot of messages, I'm not following Jon Stewart. I did not know that. Okay, here we go. Mm-hmm. So he's got this dog there. I mean, maybe he's hard to find. He's got 1.2 million followers. How could he not get... This is weird because you see right now, John, you've got just a couple hundred followers on Twitter. And
Mhm.
I saw that you put out, so he's got 51, I mean, with millions of followers, over a million, only 51 people responding. It seems to defy probability.
He's not front and center with a prime time show right now.
Yeah, but I know people who have never been front and center with a primetime show and have way less than 1.2 million followers who get more than that.
That's a good number.
Number of retweets. It's very strange to me how Twitter works. It seems quite obvious that there are, super user status type things where certain people have the ability to do things on Twitter that we don't even know about. These blue checks.
A lot of it is timing. And that's what we're going to talk about when we go patron only, is how we can use it a little bit more strategically, because a big part of what I'm doing when I do post to somebody like Jon Stewart, it's within 1 to 3 minutes of him having posted. So I want to be one of the first replies, and I'm going to reply with a type of reply that is going to sort of trigger all of your endorphins. And this is something that Elon Musk talks about, which is that everything online, everything in the world, everything, television, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, everything is really competing for like endorphins.
Speaking of Facebook, Patricia Stone is asking if you, John, are on Facebook. I think not, right?
Oh, hell no. And so that's the other twist of tonight's show, is we're also going to take a look at the company that used to be known as Facebook, which is now known as Meta, and what a debacle rebranding is. And why would you do a rebranding? And
of one of the most well-known brands in the world.
So what we're going to look at when we go patron only are some of the most successful rebrandings ever. Like you remember RJ Reynolds, right? And you remember the rebrand
or something.
So we're going to look at all those super successful
New
brands
Coke.
that you don't exactly. We're going to look at New Coke and what happened to the stock and the value of the company. And when companies do these rebrandings, obviously they have the best of intentions. But when we go patron only, we're going to dig in a little deeper and look at some of the companies that have done these rebrandings and look at what happened as a result.
In response to this rebranding as Meta, Wendy's has rebranded itself as Meat. Pretty smart.
I love it.
They do have
Wendy's.
meat there.
Wendy's has some creative marketing people. They really do, and I think they always have.
You know what? I had a meeting with Wendy's at Wendy's in Ohio. They wanted to do a whole 3D thing about their, because when these fast food chains, in addition to advertising to the public, they have these annual events where they bring together all the franchisees and they want to sell them new ovens and things for the restaurants and whatnot. Or if there's a new food product coming out and they're going to offer that product, so we put together, videos, and they want to excite the franchisees in the same way they want to excite customers. And so I went there and we were talking about doing it in 3D, and they have a whole Wendy's in the Wendy's corporate headquarters where, full disclosure, I hate the food at Wendy's. But I had to eat lunch at Wendy's with this guy, and it was fresh bun, nice hot piece of beef, and fresh lettuce and everything. So I guess it was like the best Wendy's you could possibly get. Still tasted like a foot.
Yeah. Oh, stop it. Stop it.
I don't like it.
It tastes way better than feet. Although, I guess it depends on whose feet. All right. So why don't we move on? And this is the stuff we're going to get to when we get patron only. I got a couple slides prepared for the audience for the YouTube pre-show, and I think we've got about 8 or 10 more minutes here. So let's see what we can share with everybody.
Wally, what does he have to do with this?
Well, so the Wall-E connection, for those of you who don't have kids and haven't seen the movie Wall-E, it's similar in some ways to South Park in that it's a cartoon that's not really for kids. I mean, you can sit a 3-year-old in front of it and the kid will just sit there mesmerized, not know what the hell's going on, but it's really for adults.
Yeah.
And when you get a gander at what the hell's going on in this film, it was so far ahead of its time. And effectively, the vision that Zuckerberg is presenting for Meta was
Is it?
already in the movie in Wall-E. And so we're going to look at some clips from Wall-E when we go patron only and see how similar was this vision of Zuckerberg's to the film. And it was a Pixar film, so Pixar
Yeah.
came out with it. And what year was it released? That's the one thing I forgot to look up the Wikipedia. There you
2008.
go. All right, so it's 14 years ago.
It's kind of a while.
The year after the iPhone, right? The iPhone was introduced in 2007.
Or
So
6.
1 year after, 6 or
Maybe
7,
7.
something
Like that.
So give or take 1 year after the iPhone is introduced.
2007, you're right, June.
Yeah. So 1 year later, they have this film Wall-E. And this film, again, 14 years ago, I think was somewhat prescient. Maybe Zuckerberg never saw the film. So we'll see. All right. So and we're going to take a look at this. We're going to take a look at Oculus, right? So some fascinating stuff. They paid $2 billion for Oculus.
Stock swap, though, right? I mean, they didn't pay cash like that. That guy, Lucky Palmer, what happened to him? He's been kind of
pushed away, and now
exiled.
They just killed the product.
What are you talking about? I have one.
They just killed it. They killed it today.
What?
So we're gonna take a closer look at that. All right, we're gonna take a closer look at that.
What? Christmas is coming up, and they just changed their name to a whole metaverse, and they got rid of the head.
It makes no sense at all. It makes no sense, and this is why we got a whole show based on this. This is what happens when you let 29-year-old kids run a company, and they spend $2 billion for an asset and a bunch of people. And then they tell you their future vision, and they throw away the $2 billion asset that's the gateway to what? So we're going to dig into this. Weird. If I were
look at this. This is great news. Grand Theft Auto coming on Oculus. I'm going to get that.
Yeah. Do you have a PlayStation 5?
No.
Well, yeah,
but this will be 3D, and I'll be in there walking around. What I really want people are like, no, this is transhumanism. I hate Oculus Quest. I got it so I could play the Rocky game while here in the apartment, because the gym, you got to wear a mask and everything. And I'll tell you what, you break into a sweat boxing Clubber Lang in that thing.
I'll bet you do. Well, we're going to take a closer look at his vision for Meta versus Wall-E versus your Oculus. Can you do a search that says Oculus canceled or Oculus, something like that?
Yes. Here is the Rocky game and Clubber Lang looking tough as hell.
There you go.
And
so these are your exercise. So this is your exercise secret: is you wear your goggles and you pretend that you're Rocky.
Well, no, normally I would just go to the gym, but when the world became shut down and crazy, I came up with this alternative idea, but I've been so busy with so much other stuff, I haven't really had the time to do that. But when I put in Oculus Quest and just look up news, it's talking about Grand Theft Auto, Facebook pivoting to Meta wants to pivot the Oculus Quest and AR2 one day ago. Oh yeah, look at that. No, it's getting rid of Facebook. They're separating the two is what it looks like. They're not getting rid of it. They're saying that if you ditch Facebook, you can still use the Oculus Quest. That's good news, because when Zuck kicked Crowdsource the Truth off Facebook, the Jason Goodman Facebook account went with it, and I couldn't play Rocky. I had to create a new Facebook account just to use this dumb thing.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, well, I've got a couple articles we'll look at when we go patron only. How many more minutes do we have?
We got 5.
All right, go back to my deck, and let's go to the next slide. All right, so the bottom line up front, for those of you who are not familiar with the research that we've been doing here on the show about this particular pandemic and other pandemics, the reason that I don't get terribly excited or spend a whole lot of time talking about the stuff they talk about in the news like Wuhan and Peter Daszak and the origins of SARS-CoV-2 and where did it come from, and did it come from the lab, did it not come from the lab, is because that virus is not the virus that gets my attention as much over the course of the last 2 years. So, not denying it exists in any way. Dangerous virus, scary virus, don't want to get it, and it's real. And for people who think that it hasn't been isolated, it's isolated every single day by hundreds of laboratories when they do blood tests. So when they do a blood test, that's when it gets isolated. And we looked
The
at
not
the various
isolated
different
thing,
strains.
that's Andrew Kaufman, right? Because I'm pretty sure the other day, Dr. Judy said she got into some argument with him on a podcast, and she does not agree with his whole approach to the thing.
Yeah, so there's this whole group that thinks it doesn't exist and it's never been isolated, and that's why I did those Koch's postulate videos where we looked at understanding what that means. So the bottom line up front is, I've been tracking influenza rather than SARS-CoV-2, and so to me, SARS-CoV-2 is like a yappy little dog that just shows up out of nowhere, yap 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 yap, yap, and gets a whole lot of attention. But there's something bigger going on that maybe isn't making quite as much noise. And that's this influenza outbreak. And so what this slide is showing here is 5 years of influenza, weekly deaths from PNI.
Wow.
And yeah. And
that's 18,000, that top number.
Per week.
Per week?
Yeah, per week. So look at how many weeks were over 10,000.
Wow.
I mean, a lot. Yeah. Big numbers here. So this was unprecedented. As far as the data that I was able to access, I was able to go back to 2013 was the furthest back I could get data for. And the net of it is nothing ever came close to the last 2 years.
Wow.
Now, this is influenza, right? So the cool thing is that after months and months and months of the CDC saying, don't conflate influenza with COVID, they put them in the same system side by side. So right now we're looking at 5 years of influenza. The next slide, you're going to see overlaid in their data, the COVID outbreak. So the COVID outbreak comes on and it's green. So this is what I mean by it's like the yappy dog. It gets all the attention, but the influenza is still there. It didn't just go poof. Now, my white paper from a year ago says that's what happened because that's what the data showed from the WHO, because there was no data. So you'd have to assume it disappeared. So the only place where we were able to find the data was from the coroners, and that's from the CDC, from medical examiners and coroners. And these are the death certificates. So these are weekly deaths from PNI is the blue stuff. And then the green stuff is what Deborah Birx called liberal. We take a liberal approach to mortality, meaning it's all deaths with COVID, meaning only 5% of the green stuff were people that just had SARS-CoV-2 on the death certificate, according to the comorbidity stuff on the CDC's page. So the CDC's comorbidity paragraph says 95% of the people on average had 4 comorbidities, and 5% of the people had just COVID-19 on their death certificate.
Real quick, John, we have a very serious person named Peanut Man saying, where is the evidence that they haven't isolated the virus? To him, I said, where is the evidence?
If they haven't isolated?
He's saying, where's the evidence that they have isolated it? I'm saying, where's the evidence that they haven't? You're saying it's irrelevant. The whole entire argument is a red herring to distract people from what actually matters. But tell us a bit about the evidence that it has, in fact, been isolated. You've shown us
we've looked at it.
Of it
Next
under
NEXT strain.org. And we've looked at this on the show before. So these are all the different variants. And so I'm a big believer in Dr. Malone. All right, so when Dr. Malone said, look, if you start this program of yours in the midst of the outbreak, you're going to create variants. We know that's going to
Yes.
happen. So
Multiple epidemiologists have said that, but I'm concerned about us talking about this stuff on YouTube, because even when we say things that are fact.
Next Strain. Well, that's why you pull up Next Strain, nextstrain.org, right? You pulled that up? No, you're in my deck again. We were going to Next Strain.
The problem is, hang on.
Yeah.
See, you're getting on a roll here. And people say, no, don't stop, John. A lot of people like to tell me how to run the show, but they don't understand all the different things that I'm trying to do here. They don't understand the subtle things that I understand. We can't get into this right now because we've got only 4 minutes until we need to make the transition to subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, where everybody's going to get to see it who sponsors the show. I mean, the problem is a lot of people like to tell me what to do. They don't understand what's going on. They want me to do this with this guest, that with the other guest. Everything should be free. All my YouTube channels should get canceled. The problem that I'm having is I am constantly taking crap from morons who want to sue me, jackasses on the streets of New York City. So for the people who contact me, I want to say this as diplomatically as possible. Just because you have the option to interact with us doesn't mean that everyone should. Crowdsourcing is not a big opinion poll, and in general, I don't care about the opinions of people who I don't know, whether they love me or hate me. It's nice to hear compliments from people, but for people who want to tell me how to run the show or criticize what I do, I just don't want to hear it. What they should do is start their own show and make it better than this show, and then tell me what to do. But anybody who shares an opinion or says something rude or mean about a guest or me, I'm just going to block you immediately. So please use caution when doing that, and I hope that people who dislike the show will stop watching, and people who like it will become sponsors. And if you have access to information, evidence, factual knowledge that you have that would help us, that is what we want. Not let John speak, not put it on Rumble, not don't interrupt this or that. Please don't tell me that stuff. And I'm sorry to be doing this, but I mean, I'm getting texts from people, I'm getting messages from people, I got emails coming, it's a lot of stuff. We'll be back now in 2 minutes on Subscribestar and Patreon. Please join us on I Am John Cullen.